Hello, and welcome to Ideas with Diana on Wednesday, January 27th, 2021. Um, Basically, we've done quite a few things to get through the new year, and I'm glad to see that basically with the new year, we're able to move forward. Although I do wish some things would, like the vaccine and other things, would pick up a little bit because I'm just a little bit surprised at the pace we're doing. Um, a friend of mine was able to get their COVID-19 vaccine shot at the VA in North Chicago, and it was easier than what he thought. Basically, he called and was able to contact his physician in North Chicago and basically make an appointment, get down there and they gave him the shot, and it was pretty much in and out. Not a long time, not like these big lines you see on TV. So if you're a veteran in the Chicago area, the NTC does seem to be running on a good schedule like that. Well, for today's show, I'd just like to mention something I've been doing as a project to keep busy during this coronavirus thing. I've been working on some programs that I've written in the past and actually going into the next step of converting them into C# using Visual Studio, and also converting them into Delphi LAD 10.3 from previous versions. Well, just an insight. I'll start with Delphi LAD. I do like Delphi LAD quite a bit. I also like the IDEA version, the community version of Delphi LAD. Follows the same philosophy as Visual Studio of having a community edition. Part of the thing about with Delphi LAD, though, what I do like is basically it does mesh well if you've used Delphi 7 or other older versions of Delphi. They do, mesh together very well. And we didn't have to do any type of recoding like that. Mostly just updating some printer drivers, but that's about it. And as far as compilation running on Windows, it ran well. Another thing I wanted to mention about Delphi LAD, which I thought is a great feature, though, is if you do your projects in 32-bit, you can also make them cross-available to iOS and Android using the same source code and the same forms and storyboards. So that's a positive thing too. And that helped a lot too. I did try the Android. I do like how it works. Again, though, basically, the problem with the Android, though, is you do have to, it does help if you set up a virtual machine. Like when I use it, I set up a Ubuntu virtual machine Linux on my system to run the Android emulator. And when you do set it up on a virtual machine using Ubuntu on a Windows 10 computer, it really does fly. You don't have to do like some people used to say in the old days, drink a cup of coffee to wait for the emulator to start. So it does run well. And the thing is, it's something that basically helps, to be able to keep code continuity, because when you think about computer code, you really can get into some interesting discussions, because to those of you who are Stargate SG-1 fans, let me mention an example, like on Stargate SG-1, they have the character Michael, who basically is a linguist and anthropologist who does deciphers through writings and helps talk with the different groups of people, and basically, well, the thing is, sometimes people think, well, that's one of those odd degrees. What are you going to do with it? But really, when you start looking into coding, and you get involved with coding for a long period of time, like I have and others have, I mean, you really see sometimes where coding is very much like archaeology. Just to give an example, let's see. Let me get a visual pop here. Just a minute. Whoops. 1, 2, 3. This is like archaeology, the current edition, and it talks about basically lost oasis, Germany's Stonehenge, Viking God House, ancient Greek editors. And the reason why for that is because, which is an interesting concept, is um, when you think of compilers and compilations and editors, many people think of the Roman Empire with basically Pliny the Elder, Pliny the Junior. That's another one that came to me. I just lost it, but also the Greeks had their compilers and editors too. Well, even not that withstanding, when you look at old computer code, um, let's say like you go to computer code going back 40 years ago to 1980, and you look at it. Well, some of it looks similar to today. Like you can compare BASIC to Visual Basic, but there's a few things that you'll see different compared to, like in those, like for example, you'll see like a semicolon at the end of the statement, then you'll see another statement, or you'll see a statement basically all run together. Let me get another visual pop here. Let me just write it out here, and then I'll explain what I'm going to do. I'll write it out right longhand big so everyone can see it. Okay, when you look at this, you're going to see 10, and then you're going to see let A equal 10 for I equals 1 to 10. But you notice there aren't any spaces. It's almost like medieval lighting, because what happens in medieval lighting, as well as in earlier forms of lighting, to save space, the space instead of being this big was actually compressed to almost like this. Now in here, what happens? This was a compiler and language technique that was developed early on, and the reason why is because basically spaces took memory, and when you had systems that had limited memory, you developed a scanner that would know that this is a lexical symbol 10, this is the lexical let, this is a lexical variable equal sign, and this is the lexical number. End of statement. This is the lexical for loop, lexical for the for variable, lexical for the equal sign, lexical for the starting number, lexical for the beginning of a range, and lexical for the end range 10. So when you look at old code, like if you were to go back and look at the archives on Creative Computing at archive.com, or even some issues of Byte, and that actually is a great source. Archive.com, the group that maintains that, I really give them credit for being able to maintain it for this long and even starting the project, because you can find a lot of good magazines there. Like I mentioned, Creative Computing, Byte, also 99er magazine for those of us who use the TI-994, Commodore 6, PET magazine for those of us who use Commodores. Even Nibble, which was Apple's original Apple II magazine, going back a few years. And when you look at those, you'll see some programs that basically, I mean, the magazines may seem like they're out of date, but they're really not. But when you look at some of the programs, you'll see basically how a lot of us actually learned programming when it wasn't really taught in school. Because when we went, basically programming was just something, well, if you're going to be an engineer, you'll learn this in college and such and such. And well, so when many of us, the way we learn programming, even some advanced teachers, we always used to bring Creative Computing or the other magazine, and we go through and do and some of the programs like this, where you made a spiral loop, or you made a logarithmic square, or different types of geometric shapes. And so by the time many of us graduated high school and went to college, thanks to Creative Computing, Byte Magazine, 99er, and others, many of us were actually able to test out of our freshman year. And when I went in computer science, I was actually a test out of my freshman year and began the second year in my freshman year, as many of us did. and so so basically when instructors talked with us, it was not just like basically basics on, how do you program? What is a statement? What is a command? What is a sequence, iteration, control, and branching? It was more like a master class. Like, okay, well, how can we do this better? How can we make this one faster? How we can do that? And that's where I give credit for archive.com, because they kept the magazines for another generation to learn, and also that they can self-learn, because sometimes if you can self-learn, any mistakes you made are not recorded. And what happens is it helps build your confidence, because when you do start, or even if you're experienced and you do something new, you're going to make mistakes. No one's perfect. I mean, when I write a program, it doesn't run right the first time. No. Do I have to modify it? Sure. Yeah. And sometimes I modify it because I say, well, wait a minute, there's a way you can do this. Or sometimes I modify it because when I run it, I think basically the compiler interprets this statement as doing this, but actually it interprets the statement as doing something else. So I have to recode it. And this is where, like getting back into the different things of GLAD and Visual Studio. GLAD's very good at basically what you code is what gets in the compiler, and Visual Studio is the same way. But just a hint to some people, what I would mention, though, if you think you coded something and you think a statement's not being executed, main thing is go into settings and turn your optimization off, because what happens sometimes optimization gets confused and it takes out an important block that it shouldn't. So just turn it off and then run your program, and then basically it should work. Now Visual Studio, I've been working on doing basically C# for Windows forms and ASP websites, as well as trying to get into Android. I've used C in the past, that basically just original C, a bit of C++, and then what I did was when I saw C++, I preferred to migrate over to Java, because basically I just had some concerns about C++ sometimes being a little unwieldy as a language, and so that's why I moved over to Java. But now C#, I consider C# not to be as unwieldy. It's so far with the coding project I'm doing, it's pretty easy to do. It's been pretty much easier to do things. One thing I did notice about with C# compared to using Delphi, and that is you use the word this quite a bit. This dot, this dot, this dot, this dot, whatever the function is, and in the class, and that's nice that basically you don't have to implicitly imply in the forename. And the reason why I use the forenames, again, old school, when I started in the early editions of a language, you were taught that you put the implicit forename in, so basically that you exactly specify that this was supposed to be just for this form, a form of encapsulation. But the new this protocol does do the same thing, so I can see why people move to this dot and that, though. And in Visual Studio as works good, though. But all the two compilers, I still like GLAD, because GLAD does compile quicker, and Visual Studio does, because of the long class libraries of including C++ and C#. It does take a while to compile using Visual Studio than compared to Delphi LAD. Delphi LAD basically makes, to me, what I've noticed, makes more like a more compact coding file than Visual Studio, which is a little bit bigger because of class-based. But and to be fair, an advantage of Visual Studio compared to LAD, when you do use Visual Studio, and let's say you make a release and you go away to test it. First thing with Visual Studio, though, Visual Studio does do a search on your system to make sure that you have all the appropriate drivers and modules. So, like, for example, if you need .NET 4.6, or if you need something else, what happens, they'll actually come out with a message saying, would you like us to download and install this module for you? And then it'll install for you and then run the program. Because part of the issue why that is important, though, is because sometimes if you distribute a program, you use certain modules, and someone else installs your program and their computer doesn't have that, then you get this cryptic error, Windows exception, CLAEF at 123 EEEC or something. Or it's like, well, okay. I mean, most people wouldn't understand what that means, but people who are coders or work on operating systems would be able to take that back. But then sometimes you even have to do a stack trace to figure out where this thing came back, and then you can. But again, that's why it's nice to have something that searches to make sure you have all the modules in there. Or the other way is to do basically where you just put everything, the modules, even in the code file, even if you don't need them. So basically, in case it installs it, it makes an attempt to store, and if the module's already there, it just cancels that part of the installation. So, but both packages I do like. I recommend both of them. And I do like that they have community versions available. The important point to remember now with Delphi LAD is anything you develop with the community version of Delphi LAD, you can sell. However, when you do reach a certain amount of sales, I think it's $5,000, you do have to pay for developer's license with Embarcadero, which I think is fair. I agree with that. And I'm not sure exactly what the license policy is on Visual Studio. However, if you do use Lazarus now, which is open source, which uses a Delphi-like language, then anything you develop is basically royalty-free according to the license. However, the one thing I did discover with Lazarus, which other versions of Lazarus have corrected, is that let's say you do let's say you're using units, and you have a main program, and you have a unit here and unit there, and let's say you have a unit called process. That's your own unit that you developed. Well, what happens in earlier versions of Lazarus, you get a cyclicity redundancy error or name clash. And the reason why you get that is because basically what would happen is basically in the Lazarus open source code, there is a Lazarus module called process, which is part of the compiler. And if you have something called process 2, the compiler gets confused because the compiler thinks that basically you're trying to do basically an extension of the process, to use Java notation to do extension. So, but when you do the extension, then this process calls this, and when it says, well, wait a minute, you're an extension of this, so how can you call yourself? And then that's how you get the name clash. And so what I found out the easiest solution to do is if you have a name clash and like something called process, easiest way to do is just put process 2, just put a 2 after it, and recompile it. Everything's fine and it works well. So that's it took a long time to figure out sometimes, but that's the easiest way to do it. Open source software is really working has made great strides and working well. And I'm glad that basically software companies like Microsoft and Embarcadero are helping with the community thing, because it is important that we can express ideas and share ideas in languages that are familiar to us. Because I mean, I know multiple languages, but even yesterday at a Zoom conference, I was talking with a few friends, and they said, "Well, oh, you do programming?" "Yeah, I do coding." And I said, "Well, what do you do?" I said, "Well, most I just do Delphi, Java, and C#." And and I limited myself to that because basically, I mean, there are other languages like Python and other things in there, but those 3 languages are the ones I feel most confident in. And I just to throw it out there, you can say that you can do all these different languages, Delphi, Python, HTML5, Maven and other stuff. Well, the thing is, though, what happens when you're working on a project, just don't feel bad about just saying that there's there's some things that you are better languages that you are better at working at than others, because on a project, you're going to be on a time schedule, you're going to be on a quality schedule. So, if you want to use some languages that you're not familiar with to build up your experience, that's fine. But but maybe you should let your client know that basically, it might take a little bit longer than compared to if you're working in this other language. And the thing is, so many companies will understand that, many clients will understand that, who have been in the business a long time, because those that are not, well, I'm trying to think of a delicate word to say this, but those that are not just interested in quick and dirty solutions will understand that people have a mindset that they think in a different way or think in a different language. It's like even spoken languages. Some people, the native language is English, other people native language is Espanol. That doesn't mean that one language is better than the other. It just means that conceptually how they conceptualize things, but they still can work together. But it's just basically if one person is forced to speak, conceptualize a language outside of their native language, it could make some issues with trying to be as productive. So if team members basically accept diversity and have a way so basically someone can, people can still communicate, we actually get a better team. Well, I'd like to know what you think. The best way I prefer to be reached is on Twitter at Diana1A. And I do have a Facebook account, and I have had people message me by Messenger, but again, please just send it to me at Diana1A on Twitter, because the problem I have with Messenger is when I use Messenger on my phone to review my messages, it blows up my phone. It overloads my memory. It causes all sorts of memory errors. So on Twitter, I can read the messages sooner and get back to you sooner, whether I'm using my phone or laptop or computer. So, well, the best thing for those of us who had snow, if you have a chance to stay in, just look outside, enjoy the snow, have a hot cup of coffee or cocoa, and basically just sort of, well, use a version of chill out, but basically just, or even chill out with a friend, because you don't always have to be on the computer and you don't always have to be thinking about coding. Well, this has been Ideas with Diana for January 27, 2021, and I'd like to thank all of you for viewing.